We are going to talk all things money today. And I know this is a topic that not a lot of people discuss. There's also not a lot of transparency in the youth soccer community. So, we're going to talk all about opportunities for scholarships and different ways of getting financial aid academically and athletically. How much money can you get? What are the chances of getting full rides? We are going to talk about everything. I have a whole list of questions here for Don and Steve. And yeah, let's get into it. So we'll just go back and forth between you two. I know you have your different specialties. Steve is more on the academic Ivy League side of soccer programs and recruiting, and then Don more on the D1 and some of the other divisions and athletic scholarships. So my first question is, what are the different types of financial aid and scholarship opportunities on the athletic side? So we'll start with you, Don.
On the athletic side, well, let's just say first of all that there are basically three types of scholarships. One is need based, okay, and that exists in virtually every college in the country. And the other one is academic based, based solely on grades, and then the third would be based on athletics. Okay, so anyone that I missed there, Steve? Basic, besides government money, grant money, government money, besides that,
Just
just talking
generally
institutional
government grant
money.
money we throw under, need based.
Institutional money, I should have said.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you covered them all. Not every school has all three, but that's the three that a school could possibly have.
So then the question again, Erica, athletic
Mhm.
money?
Yes, I guess we can just start with what divisions offer athletic scholarships. Is it all divisions? Is it just Division 1? Are there exceptions? So just kind of get into that.
Yeah. Okay. So NCAA Division One may offer up to 14 scholarships for the women and up to 9.9 for the men. So that is may offer. That's NCAA allows them to offer up to that amount. It could be zero, as in the Ivy League at Division One, and then it could be at fully funded, which would mean up to 14 or 9.9. Division Two, 9.9 for the women and 9 for the men. And this is in soccer now, okay? So let's differentiate real quickly. Let's circle back because we have two types of scholarships. If somebody in American football, so Division One, American football, uh, basketball, men and women, volleyball, women only, track and field, women only, not gymnastics, women only, not track and field. Those sports, I don't think I'm missing any, are what they call head count sports. Okay. So they may give an American football team 75 scholarships. I think they can give up to 82. I may have that number wrong because I'm not a football guy, but it's a big number. And when they give out $1, they give out an entire scholarship. So nobody would come to my school for a $1 scholarship. So therefore, the head count, the scholarship is a full ride. It is housing, tuition, food, fees, all combined, okay, into one big scholarship. But in all the other sports, it's called equivalency scholarships. So, in other words, equivalent to up to 14 scholarships for women. And the coach could take those scholarships and give 500 to one person. That would be what we call a books scholarship. Well, we'll cover your books for the year, or 1,000 or 1,500. We'll cover your books for the year. And then that gets subtracted out of a pool. So the pool could be $1 million at a very expensive private school, maybe like Baylor, right? But for a school like a state school, like maybe UC Davis, it's a much smaller number because the dollars to get into the school is much less. Does that make sense? So they just take the equivalent of how many that is. That's the pool of money. And then the coach is allowed to allot out of that pool of money. I don't know if I've ever seen a scholarship under 500. Most schools just cut that off of the limit. If you're not going to give, you can't give $50 to one and 100 to another. So, but you could give up to a full scholarship for somebody, and again, a full scholarship, housing, tuition, food, fees. Okay, so that's Division One. Division Two, like I said, 9 and 9.9. NAIA up to 12, but it's a little complicated because NAIA coaches generally get a pool of money that is athletic and academic. So the coach might have $800,000 to give out, but it's not all athletic money, because in the NAIA, if you have, and I might get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is it. It's been a long time since I've coached in the NAIA. But if you get above a 3.5 GPA, the coach then can give you money out of their pool of money, and it does not count against their athletic money. So the athletic money is only, they just hold out for the kids that have a 3.2 GPA and a 3.0 GPA. Then they'll give those kids the athletic money. The kids that have higher GPAs, the 4.0 kids, they can give them the academic money, but yet it all comes out of the same pool. So an NAIA school might have 20 kids on a full scholarship playing for their school. I think there's only 2 schools in the country, Division I junior college, that I know of. My son's school happens to be one of them, Northern Idaho Community College, but they have up to 24 LOIs, letters of intent, that they can give out that will cover everything for that kid. And then Division II junior college can give out up to same number of LOIs, except they cannot cover housing in Division II. They can't cover the housing or the food bit. So they can cover all the tuition and the fees and the books, but they can't cover the housing. And then Division III, whether it's a junior college or whether it's NCAA, no athletic scholarship money allowed.
So Don, I have a question for you. When you're talking about state schools, are the scholarships divvied up between in-state and out-of-state, or does it not matter?
Depends. Most, not all, but many state schools have agreements with other states that are close to them and surrounding, because they're interchanging students all the time. So in California, for example, we have the Western University Exchange, the WUI. And so we have 13 Western states that exchange, and instead of being, so an in-state, for example, might be 15,000 at Cal State East Bay, and I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but the out-of-state might be 29,000 for out-of-state. But they will split the difference for a WUI kid, so it'll be 1.5 times in-state tuition. So many parents talk about scholarships, and they say, "Oh, my kid got a scholarship because they're part of the WUI program." So sort of, right? And there's all kinds of agreements with other states that goes on with. And then, but generally that pool of money is based on the number is based on a total of in-state, but then they might be allowed a certain number of out-of-state, that they will take that money and they will pool it in with there, and then they can have a certain number. But man, that's a tough one to generalize on, because every single state has their own governance committee that makes the rules that may change from year to year for that state's schools. In California, we have 2 governance committees. We have the Cal State group, and then we have the UC group, the University of California group. And they are run separately. Their fees are set separately. Their rules about how scholarships are going to work are set separately. And then they answer to the Board of Education for the state to get final approval. Okay, so it's a complicated question. It's not a yes or a no.
Don, I have a question about the D1 and D2 athletic scholarships. So, what percentage of players coming into the program get the full ride or close to a full ride, who are actually getting a substantial amount of money? And how does the coach decide who gets that from that incoming class?
Well, if you're an incoming freshman and you just left the Bayern Leverkusen Youth Academy, and you're a boy and you're going to be the best player on the team, the coach will do everything that they can get to get you. Okay. They aren't going to let you slip away because you're going to have a lot of full ride offers. Okay. If you're an outstanding player and you're going to be the best player on the team. But if the coach looks at you and says, look, the first question I always ask my staff, at least, and I think a lot of coaches do the same, the staff member brings me a player, who are they better on than on our team? Who are they better than? And if they're said, well, they're better than Susan, and Susan is our 17th best player, I can't afford to give scholarship money to number 17 on my roster. If I've got some money left over and I really like the family and I like the kid, I might give them books. But what it has become, Erica, is an earn your way in to the scholarships type system, because players are transferring out so quickly now and they're so quick to leave. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you're a great player. I really like you. I don't know why you didn't get picked up. Maybe you couldn't afford the Division I schools that are offering you. If I'm a Division II coach, when I was at Cal State East Bay, if I was still there, I would say, come in and let's see how you do. And if you do well, then we reward you. And by the time you're a senior, you might be on close to a full ride. Junior might be on 3/4, and a sophomore might be on a half, and the freshman might be on books only. A lot of coaches like to spread out their money to as many people as they can to try to alleviate a little bit of the jealousy of, geez, I'm starting and I'm not on money, and she's on a full ride and she's on the bench. That does happen from time to time, and it creates problems within the team quite often. So it's better off to say, look, no. I know I read in Anson Dorrance's book, Training Soccer Champions, he talked about nobody is on a full ride at North Carolina. Nobody, not a single player, not athletically on a full ride. He wanted to spread it out to as many players as possible on the team. And so if you've got 14 and, everybody's on a half, that's 28 players. That's almost a full roster on a half. And I think a lot of coaches would like to see that more than they'd like to see all of my eggs going in one basket. Now, what happens if that player's hurt? What happens if that player's academically ineligible? What happens if that player leaves? Then I would rather have that money spread out to the whole team. So the answer is always, Erica, it depends. How good is the player and how high in demand are they within the marketplace as a whole, right? So I might spend more money on a player that looks like they're going to go to my conference rivals than I am on a player who's going to go to the other side of the country and, I'll never face them probably. I might be willing to give more money to that kid that's looking to stay, within our conference.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, for Division I and Division II, you can also get an academic scholarship in addition to
Maybe,
athletic for some schools.
maybe. So that's what the term we're talking about is called stacking. And so stacking allows a school to give athletic and academic aid. And then you stack them, you combine them. That could equal a full ride. So a lot of kids, when they say, I'm on a full ride, they're getting 75% academic money, 25% athletic money, and then they're not paying anything when they go to school. And or some kind of other weird money. So my son went to St. Francis in Loretto, Pennsylvania. I think at the time when BJ Craig recruited him, it was like $38,000 a year, something like that, well above our family budget. Well, the minute he signed his name, he got a Reach Hire award. That was $8,000 for signing his name. Okay, and applying. So now we're down to 30. And then he got some kind of other $5,000 one and another $3,000 one. So, all of a sudden we're down to 22. Okay. And then the coach gave him like 16 and it left us with like 7, or gave him 15 and it left us with like 8. So almost a full ride, none of it academic. It was just a presidential award. It was a Reach Hire award. Now private schools can do this. So what a private school quite often does is I always say it's like walking into a store. You're going to buy a television set and you see an advertisement. It's a television set that you could walk down to you could go to Walmart or you go to Costco and you could get for $1,000. You know the price of that set. And they say, we have a $3,000 television set on sale for $1,000. So they've discounted it by $2,000, but they overpriced it in the first place. So there's a lot of private schools out there that are fine. They're lovely schools. They're great. But they've overpriced their product. It's kind of like the sticker price on a car, right? Who plays sticker price for a car? Nobody, right? You can always get it discounted if you work it, and then private schools will do that. So they have the presidential award and an enrollment award and an application award and this, and they'll get it down to a figure. Then the coach can work off of that figure and then work within the family budget to have what's left over. So private schools can do that. You're not going to find that in public schools. You'll find more public schools that are willing to stack money than you will maybe private schools, but private schools can do kind of whatever they want. Because the private school, I've had kids tell the enrollment department, it's too much for me. And they go, well, what can you pay? Okay, that's what you'll pay. And you won't find that at public schools nearly as often. I've never heard of it happening.
Steve,
So I would say
you'd
one
add?
thing, Don,
Yes.
especially on the private schools out, in the Northeast, basically, is when you do your CSS and your FAFSA and they come up with your COA number, that,
Cost of attendance, by the way. COA, cost of attendance. A good term for people to remember. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, no worries. That they target that number. And so sometimes if you were to get a Pell Grant, that'll come out, they'll deduct some of the other things that they stack because that's the number that you're going to pay. And so sometimes even with private scholarships, Pell Grants, so, if you got some athletic money or an academic money, that comes off your need-based money because you're going to pay that COA.
Now, Steve, I know you deal with schools, a lot of the schools that you're familiar with, and I'm going to ask you, are you talking about the schools that have a low acceptance rate?
Yes.
Those really high in demand schools?
Yes.
As opposed to a private school that, I don't know, I've never heard of that school. Who are they? Type of school?
No, these are almost all schools with like sub 20% acceptance rates that, the FAFSA or the CSS, because FAFSA was delayed this year, they always give, what the parent contribution is. And so they target their aid to that contribution. And if you bring in other aid, Pell Grant being, the most popular. So if you bring in a Pell Grant after they give you the aid, they just deduct your financial need from the institution.
So in other words,
it's very difficult to get below that number.
Got it. They've got a set price they expect that family is going to be paying if you want to go to that school.
Yes.
And just to clarify one more time, this is the, I call them U.S. News and World Report top academic schools.
Yeah, your top 50
type schools, right? Okay, all right. Good point.
So, Steve, do you just want to expand further on academic scholarships and what type of student you have to be? What are they looking at for girls to be getting these scholarships? Like, is it course load, GPA, SAT scores, extracurriculars? Like, just inform us on all of it.
Sure. So, just like athletic scholarships and stuff, not every school gives academic money. Some of your Ivy Leagues don't. Some of your they call them baby Ivies, and your top academic D3s, they don't give academic aid. For those that do, the range is quite large. So, there's one college out here that if you got above a 1250 on an SAT, you're given a 50% scholarship. So that's the lowest SAT number for that type of money that I've ever seen. And then, when they talk about test optional, very few academic scholarships are test optional. So you have a much better chance on the academic scholarship side, if you submit good test scores than if you leave them out, which is different from admissions. Um, and then and then what's difficult about high schools is different high schools, their GPA and their school profile is so different that it's very difficult to go by GPA alone. So they look at the school profile, and then they also look at the rigor of the classes you're taking. So if you're taking basic classes for your high school, you're highly unlikely to get academic aid at a top university. If you're taking the most rigorous classes your high school gives, that increases your chances dramatically. So it's not, oh, I was a 93 student, but I took medium level classes, probably doesn't cut it. A 92 student or 91 student in the toughest classes would be getting more academic money than the one who's taking the easier classes. So there's definitely a balance. I usually like to say it's about 3 to 4 points. So if you're looking at a scale of 1 to 100, so if you're talking about, let's say it's Calc AB versus Calc BC, and so if you don't think the difference is going to be more than 4 points in your grade, always take the tougher class. If you think it's going to be a 10-point difference, then take the easier class. And that's generally how it's going to weigh towards the academic money at a lot of the better schools.
Now, for academics, athletes can get a full ride from academic scholarship alone, or is it only a certain limit of money they can give out for academics? Or does it depend on the school?
It depends on the school. So I don't know of any school that gives true full rides for academic. There's always that academic financial need combination. I'm sure
I can name
there are.
I can name one sort of, and it's you kind of. So I've seen LSU's numbers. So if you have a 3.0, but you score 1600 on the SAT, it's a full ride. Period for every student, no matter what. So a 3.5 doesn't get you more money. If you're at 3.5, then and you score a 1250, it's not a full ride. But if you get a 3.0 and you score a 1600, it is a full ride. So purely at the state school that I can think of, that there aren't many like that though. We're talking about the exceptions.
Yeah, I agree. It's for a full academic ride, it's the exception, not the rule.
Right.
Don, is there anything else you would add on the academic side or even athletic side?
No, I mean, they're pretty simple questions. So you can ask the coaches when you're talking to them. Coaches know if their schools allow stacking or not.
Yeah.
They know if you can stack athletic and academic aid. It's an easy question. Admissions can answer. I mean, financial aid, sorry, can answer those questions. Admissions may or may not. They usually push you over to financial aid. They usually try to stay in each other's lanes or out of each other's lanes, rather. Yeah.
Let's shift gears into the governmental aid. So get more into that. I don't think that this one's talked about enough in our space.
Yeah. Well, look. So the kids fill out their FAFSA forms, and like Steve said, we've had a major problem this year. Hopefully, it'll settle down next year. And then that information. So when you fill out your financial aid forms, you can send. You can automatic. Every school has a code associated with that school that's registered with the government, and then you can put in the code of that school to your FAFSA forms, and they will send your information directly to the school. They can see everything. They can see your tax returns. They can see everything that they need to make a decision. And most schools are going to want that filled out before they quote you a nickel. They have no idea. They're not going to tell you over the phone. So how much money you make? Oh, I make $120,000 a year. Okay, then it's only going to be this. They don't do that. Okay.
Can I add something in there?
Yes,
Don?
go ahead. Yes, of course.
NPCs. If you go online and use a school's NPC without submitting the form, you could get a pretty good general idea of what it's going to cost you.
Yeah, and yes, you can. Yes, you can. And almost every school has some sort of a calculator that you
Yep.
can fill in, and you can put in your numbers, and it gives you a general idea. Even when you Google a school, you can see that, oh, it's $58,000, but the average student only pays $24,000. It gives you kind of a general idea of the average student. But
Yeah.
parents in general know that if you make $500,000 a year, as opposed to another parent that makes 90,000 a year, the 90,000 is probably going to get more money than the $500,000 a year parent. Pretty logical.
Yeah, I found that using the MPCs early in the process will give you a good sense of what you're going to pay at that particular institution. It's not 100% accurate, but it'll give you directionally where you're roughly going to be.
Yeah, I always call it like window shopping for cars. There's no point in
Yep.
shopping for Lamborghinis if you're on a Honda budget, right?
Yep.
You can start jonesing for that school and that car all you want, but if you can't afford that school, then maybe you should look at something else. And this is a good way to do it. That's a really good point, Steve. I hadn't thought about that.
That was going to be my next question. And as people start going through the recruiting process, I know we've talked a lot about finding the right fit. Do you want a big school or a small school? What kind of team do you want to be on? Where do you want to be? But should people first look at this financial information before looking at all the other things for the right fit?
So for me, I don't look at it as first or second. There's a group of things that should be part of your initial review. So whether I can afford it or not, if the school doesn't have my major, it doesn't really matter, right? If I don't want to be more than a 5-hour drive from home, what the school costs probably doesn't really matter, right? So there's a bunch of the non-negotiables, but there's a list of them. There isn't one. There may be 5 for this family or 7 for that family, and then you use that block of non-negotiables in your initial search. But it's not, look at finance first or look at distance first. It's a for me, and John may have a different opinion. It's a block of about 5 to 7 items that, once you put together, those are my non-negotiables, and then I use that as a single test. Does it check the 7 boxes?
So I would agree. But the money may matter to look, if I have a zero budget for school, then and money is my number one. So everything is weighted. I agree 100%. I always say it's a series of tick boxes, but it's not just tick boxes. They're weighted.
Yeah.
For my son, soccer was weighted at a 100. Academics was weighted as a 2. Finances was weighted at an 80. Location was rated at a 0. He didn't care where it was. Other families, location is rated at 100. Finances are rated at a 0. I've had families I've had a dad tell me, any school in the country, I could write a check right now. It wouldn't even budge my bank account. So take the money off the table, Don. I don't care. I've had other families that are on full Pell, full financial aid. They would get they get $25,000 a year to start with from the government because the family is dirt poor living in the ghetto. Okay. So now money becomes the number one issue for that family. Where can I afford to go to school? Period. Because nothing else matters. Then you take the soccer and you weight that in. Then you take the academics and you weight that in. So everybody has to not only have that list that you talked about, Steve, it's spot on, and it could be between 3 and 10 different items. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then weight them. Decide, like you said, I love that term, Steve. That's excellent. Non-negotiables. Determine what your non-negotiables are, then you can go forward. So yeah, for some families the money matters a lot. For other families, it's a 0.
And I'll add to that for the families where the money matters and they have to be really smart about it. That might mean for soccer, they might have to compromise and play D2 or an unknown D1. Or if the player is excellent, then great. Maybe they'll be on a top 25 D1 team and get some money. So it's just some things to consider, and some compromise will have to be made either way.
Yeah, you're going to have to compromise at some point. Most kids are going to have to make compromises at some point. Very rarely, one of my favorite, I've posted this a million times, is the Rolling Stones song, you can't always get what you want. And I know everybody wants what they want, what they want, what they want. And I've dreamed of this and that's what I want. You can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you can get what you need. And I think more kids need to be focusing on their needs rather than their wants, because there's a lot of things I want. I wanted to coach Arsenal, and guess what? It's never going to happen. Okay. There's some things that you just can't have. And I think focusing on what's important, what's going to accomplish your goals that you have set, setting off in that direction, and then can you afford it?
Steve, is there anything
Yeah.
you want to end on for our money talk?
I think when you're talking about need, families should look. There's two types of need. Like there's institutional given need and federal given need. So need does have the two different categories. So some institutions with bigger endowments do add more to the federal need than others. So need breaks down in two. But I think other than that one thing that stood out, I think we gave a good holistic view of the environment.
Now, Steve, is it true that many of the Ivy League schools have endowments that are so large that most of the students don't pay?
Most of the Ivy League schools have endowments so large that most of the students don't have to pay. What's becoming very popular is if you make under 100,000 as a family or under 150,000 as a family, the school has a blanket policy that you don't pay. But to sit there and say most students don't pay, I would say would be inaccurate. Their endowments are so large that their threshold in what a family's contribution needs to be is higher than others. But there's some very good D3 schools, one particular up in Maine that has a very substantial endowment. And I think they're pretty close to if your family makes under 100,000 a year, the school covers the tuition. So it's the Ivy Leagues, and there are some other D3s, especially the academic D3s with huge endowments that also meet much higher than what the FAFSA says the government need is, or the family contribution is going to be.
Good, thank you. Yeah, these are just things that I hear thrown out there, and yeah, that's good.
Well, thank you guys for going into a discussion on money. I think we did cover everything, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below or feel free to message Steve or Don. I'll leave their Twitter profiles in the caption below. So, Steve and Don, thank you again, and we hope this helped, and I'll see you on the next episode.